My phone buzzed at 2:47 in the afternoon. I was sitting in a plastic chair at St. Luke's waiting room, bad coffee, visiting my old buddy Pete, who just had a stent put in. Not the kind of afternoon where you expect your career to blow up. The text was from Dale Okafor, Deputy Director of Contracts at TX. Man I'd worked alongside for 14 years. Roy, did you resign? Call me. Now, I read it twice. Then I called him. He picked up before the first ring finished. Roy, I just got an email from a Brent Cole at Pinnacle. Says you're moving into an advisory capacity, and he'll be taking over as primary contact on all active contracts. It's CC'd to 14 people on my team. The Federal Audit Office, too. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Dale, I didn't resign. Silence on his end. Long enough that I could hear the hallway noise behind him. Then we have a problem, he said, but not yours. My name is Roy Harmon. I'm 54 years old. I've spent 26 years in federal infrastructure contracting, highway corridors, bridge rehab, drainage systems, the kind of work that doesn't make headlines but keeps roads from falling apart. I'm not a flashy guy. I keep paper files, show up on time, and return every call within 2 hours. That's the whole system. I joined Pinnacle Infrastructure Partners 19 years ago when it was 6 people working out of a strip mall office in Austin. Carl Cole built the company. I'll give him that. He could sell a project to anyone in a room. What he couldn't do was manage a 5-year federal contract from the inside. That part was me. The TX. Relationship started at a conference 14 years ago. Carl introduced me to Dale Okafor in a hotel lobby and wandered off to work another table. Dale and I talked for close to an hour, not about money, about why government projects kept running over budget and behind schedule, and what you'd actually have to change to fix it. He was direct, no spin. I liked him immediately. He didn't return Carl's follow-up call. He returned mine. Over 14 years, that conversation became $340 million in active federal contracts. 5 major highway corridor projects, 3 bridge rehabilitation programs, a drainage overhaul in the Hill Country that ran exactly 11 days over schedule because of a flood, not because of us. Dale mentioned that at the last contract renewal, like it was a point of pride. I think it was. I built that #1 phone call at a time, 1 compliance report at a time, 1 6 a.m. call when a subcontractor threatened to walk off a job outside Waco. I need to say something about Gloria here, because this story doesn't make sense without her. Gloria Harmon, my wife of 24 years. She died 4 years ago, ovarian cancer, 18 months from diagnosis to the end. Neil was 15 when we found out. He was 16 when she was gone. There's a kind of quiet that settles into a house after something like that. Not peaceful quiet, just absence. When Gloria was really sick, the last 6 months, I missed things at work I shouldn't have missed. Not because I didn't care, because I cared about her more. Dale Okafor never said a word about it. He deferred 2 contract renewal meetings without being asked. Told his team to hold the schedule. He said Roy will call when he's ready. That's not a business story. That's a man showing you who he is. I went back to work 12 days after her funeral. Not because I wanted to. Because the TX. Quarterly compliance review was in 3 weeks, and nobody else at Pinnacle understood the reporting structure Dale required. Nobody. That's not arrogance. That's the truth. Neil was 16 then. Quiet kid, good at math, handles things without making a production of it, got that from his mother. He's 19 now, first year at UT Austin, calls on Sundays. We don't talk long, but we talk. Brent Cole walked into Pinnacle 13 months before that text from Dale. 27 years old. MBA from Wharton, still warm. Previous experience, 10 months as a strategic growth consultant at a logistics startup that moved craft beer between microbreweries. That was the whole resume outside a classroom. Carl created the title VP of Business Development specifically for him. The title didn't exist before Brent. Neither did the corner office with the good window that used to be our file storage room. First week, he sat in on a TX. Project review I was running. Spent most of it on his laptop. After the meeting, he pulled me aside and said Pinnacle needed to modernize its stakeholder engagement ecosystem. I asked what that meant. He said fresher energy in client-facing roles and more strategic touchpoints. I nodded, went back to my desk. 3 months later, he scheduled a lunch with Dale Okafor without telling me. Dale texted me that same afternoon. Did you send someone named Brent? He spent 45 minutes talking about digital transformation. I'm not sure what he thinks we do. I replied, ignore it. I'll call you Thursday. 2 months after that, Brent ran a client experience strategy presentation for the full staff. 41 slides, lifestyle photos on our quarterly report covers, a new color palette for project update emails. Sandra Briggs, my project coordinator of 11 years, leaned over and whispered something to me. I won't repeat it, but it was accurate. What Brent never did in 13 months at Pinnacle. Read a federal contract. Sit in on a compliance audit. Ask me how the TX reporting structure worked. Ask why Dale Okafor had spoken to exactly one person at this firm for 14 years and why that mattered. He didn't ask because he didn't think he needed to. 6 weeks before the email, I was walking to the break room. Carl's office door was cracked open. The hallway carried sound better than people realized. Brent's voice, clear and certain. Roy's 54. He's not going to reinvent how he operates. We don't need to push him out. We just transition around him. He'll stay if we give him a title. He needs this job. I stopped, stood in that hallway and counted to 10. Old habit from job sites. When you feel the ground shift, you count before you move. I waited for Carl to say something. Anything. He didn't. I went back to my office, opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, looked at the manila folder sitting against the back panel, the one I hadn't touched in 6 years. I closed the drawer. Not yet. Here's the thing about federal infrastructure contracts that most people don't understand. It's not about the lowest bid. It's not about the fanciest proposal deck. It's about who picks up the phone at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday when an inspector flags a drainage issue that could shut down a $40 million corridor project. It's about who already knows the answer before the inspector finishes the sentence. That's what 14 years builds, not a client relationship, a working trust. And working trust is not transferable. You can't CC it to 14 people and call it a transition. Brent Cole didn't know that. He thought relationships were accounts. Line items you could reassign with an org chart update and a professional email. He found out he was wrong on a Monday afternoon at 2:31 p.m. when he pressed send. I didn't know about the email until Dale's text hit my phone at 2:47. I sat in that waiting room for a few more minutes after we hung up. Pete was still in recovery. The coffee was still bad. The fluorescent lights were doing that faint flicker thing hospital lights always do. I thought about the manila folder in my garage filing cabinet. Then I drove home. That night, after I'd made dinner and sat with the quiet of the house for a while, I went out to the garage. Single bulb overhead, concrete floor, smell of motor oil and old cardboard. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the folder. Master Services Agreement, Pinnacle Infrastructure Partners and Texas State Transportation Authority. The tab read TX.MSA, Exhibit D. I sat on an overturned bucket and read Exhibit D, paragraph 11B, the way I'd read it a dozen times before, slowly, every word. In the event of replacement or termination of the named relationship director without 90 days prior written notice and written approval from the authority reserves the right to terminate all active contracts without penalty on 30 days' notice. I'd suggested this clause 6 years ago during the contract renewal. Hank Paulson, my attorney, 22 years in government contracts, law, careful man, talked plain, drafted the language. Dale's legal team reviewed it and signed off. Carl Cole signed the final agreement on page 34. I watched him sign it. He signed it because he trusted me to stay. He never considered the other direction. I also need to tell you about the subcontractors, because this matters later. On 3 of the 5 active TX. Corridor projects, the major subs, earthwork, structural steel, traffic management, had signed on specifically because of me, not Pinnacle. Me, I'd worked with Denny Hobart at Hobart Earthworks for 11 years. Lou Ferris at Lone Star Structural for 9. They knew how I ran projects. They knew I didn't bury problems in reports, and I didn't let owners shift blame onto subs when the owner's plans were wrong. Their agreements had no formal clause like mine. But they had phone numbers. And when your primary relationship at a $340 million job walks, you make calls before you decide whether to stay? I closed the folder, turned off the garage light, and went inside. Saturday morning, I called Hank at 7:15. He picked up on the second ring. I told him everything. The email, Dale's text, what I'd heard through Carl's door 6 weeks ago. Hank was quiet for a few seconds. Exhibit D, paragraph 11B. It's valid. Been valid for 6 years. He paused. Roy, the moment that email landed in TX.'s inbox announcing your transition, the clock started. Dale doesn't need to prove intent. He just exercises the clause. No arbitrations window. None. I drafted it that way on purpose. 30 days notice, no penalty, no counter move. Another pause. You know what Brent handed you? Yeah, I said. I know. What do you want to do? I want to do it right. I called Dale at 9 a.m. The conversation ran 7 minutes. I didn't ask him to terminate. I read him the clause because he had a right to know exactly what his options were. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, Roy, I've been doing business with you for 14 years. Not with Pinnacle. With you, I don't know this Brent Cole. I've had one lunch with him where he talked at me for 45 minutes and never asked a single question about our actual projects. I didn't say anything. My contracts office flagged the email Friday afternoon as a potential trigger event. Legal's been reviewing all weekend, I figured. You'll hear from us Monday morning. I thanked him and hung up. Then I went inside, poured a second cup of coffee, and pulled up the Texas LLC registration website. Harmon Federal Advisory. I'd been sitting on that name for 2 years. Never thought I'd actually use it. I started filling in the fields. Neil called Sunday evening regular as clockwork. We talked about his classes, a calculus exam he thought he'd done well on. Toward the end, he said, You sound weird, Dad. Quieter than usual. Just thinking through some work stuff. Good weird or bad weird. I thought about it for a second. Not sure yet. Okay. He didn't push. He never pushes. Got that from his mother too. Call me when you know. I will. Monday morning, 10 to 2 a.m., the termination notice hit Pinnacle's contracts inbox. TX. Was exercising its right under Exhibit D, Paragraph 11B, full contract termination, 30 days notice. Zero penalty to the authority. $340 million in active backlog. Gone. I was at my kitchen table when it happened, reviewing LLC documents Hank had sent over the night before. Sandra texted me at 10 to 38. Something's happening. Carl locked his door 20 minutes ago. Nobody's talking. At 10 to 51, Brent called. I watched the phone vibrate on the table. 4 rings. 5, 6. I let it go. At 11:14, Carl called. I watched his name on the screen and thought about 19 years. Thought about a San Antonio parking lot after we'd won the first TX. Corridor contract. He shook my hand and said, Roy, you built this. I let it go. By that afternoon, things got worse for Pinnacle in ways Brent never anticipated. Denny Hobart called me at 20:30. Roy, I heard about TX. I need to know what's happening before I make any decisions. I told him what I could. He was off the phone in 4 minutes. Lou Ferris called at 3:15, same conversation. The third sub, Vic Alderman at Central Texas Traffic Systems, didn't call me at all. He called Dale directly and filed his exit notice by end of day. All 3 subcontractors out within 48 hours. $18 million in bonding capacity Pinnacle couldn't replace on short notice. Brent had never read their agreements. He didn't know those relationships had roots he couldn't see from a slide deck. Then Hank called me Tuesday morning with something I hadn't fully anticipated. TX. Is treating this as a material change in key personnel on a federally assisted project. They're calling the performance bond, Roy. Carl had personally guaranteed that bond 4 years ago during a contract expansion, $85 million, non-refundable, due in 30 days. His personal assets were on the line. I sat with that for a moment. Is there anything I did wrong, Hank? You read a contract, he said. That's all you did. Norma Lyle, Pinnacle's general counsel, found Exhibit D, Paragraph 11B, on a Wednesday afternoon. Sandra told me about it that evening. She'd been outside the main conference room dropping off a compliance binder when she heard Norma's voice through the door. Not arguing, reading, slow and flat, the way lawyers read things when they're not sure they're reading them right and need to hear the words out loud to confirm it. The room went quiet after she finished. Then Carl's voice, read it again, so she did. Then, when did I sign this? Norma told him 6 years ago, contract renewal, page 34. Carl asked to see his signature. Norma slid the page across the table. According to Sandra, who had stopped pretending she wasn't listening, nobody said anything for close to 30 seconds after that. Then Brent's voice, this has to be a drafting error. Contracts don't work this way. Someone would have caught this. Norma's voice, flat, someone did catch it. That's why it's in there. More silence. Then Carl, what's the bond situation? Norma told him $8.15 million, personal guarantee, 30 days to fund or default. His name on the line, not the company's. Sandra said after that she heard a chair scrape back from the table, and then nothing for a while. She texted me. Norma just read something out loud, and the whole room went silent. Carl looks bad. Brent tried to argue with her, and she shut him down in one sentence. I don't know what's in that document, but whatever it is, it just changed everything. I read the text, set my phone down, and finished my coffee. Thursday afternoon, Carl called again. This time I picked up. His voice had aged since the last time we talked face to face. Not tired. Something more permanent than tired. Roy, I need to sit down with you, please. Just 30 minutes. Where? My office? Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I said I'd be there. I drove to Pinnacle Friday morning and parked in the visitor lot. First time I'd used that entrance in 19 years. The security guard at the front desk recognized me and waved me through without asking for ID. Some things don't need paperwork. The floor was wrong. Not wrong in a way you could point at specifically, just the feel of it. The kind of quiet that happens when people know something is ending, and nobody wants to be the one talking when it does. 2 offices near the south wall had boxes stacked outside them. One desk near the window sat completely cleared. I walked to Carl's corner office. Door was open. Carl was behind his desk. He'd always been a large physical presence in that room. Not tall exactly, but solid, the kind of man who took up space naturally. That morning, he looked like something had been quietly removed from inside him. Brent was standing by the window with his arms crossed. He dressed for the meeting the way he dressed for everything, like the clothes were doing a job the person inside them wasn't equipped to do. His jaw was set, but his eyes were tired at the edges. Norma Lyle sat to Carl's left, yellow legal pad, pen uncapped. She looked at me the way you look at something when you're not sure if you should have caught it sooner. I sat down. Carl started. Roy, I want to be clear. I did not authorize that email. I did not know Brent was sending it. But you knew about the transition plan. He paused a beat too long. Yes. And you didn't think I should be part of that conversation. He looked at the pen holder on his desk. He didn't answer. Brent stepped forward. Roy, this is completely disproportionate. Succession planning is responsible management. If you'd been willing to adapt your role instead of, I looked at him. I wasn't in the conversation because nobody invited me to it. Even, no heat in it. You sent an email to 14 federal employees announcing my departure. Without telling me. Without telling your own father. You did it because you assumed I'd accept whatever you decided and stay quiet. I let that sit for a second. I heard you say that through your father's door. 6 weeks ago. He needs this job. He'll fall in line. The room went still. Carl looked up from his desk. Brent opened his mouth, closed it. Exhibit D, paragraph 11B. I put the folder on Carl's desk, opened to page 34. His signature, 6 years old, still clean. Hank Paulson drafted this clause. Dale's legal team reviewed and approved it. You signed it, Carl. The clause states that if I'm replaced or transitioned out without 90 days written notice and authority approval, TX. Can terminate without penalty. They terminated Monday morning. Norma made a note on her legal pad. The scratch of the pen was the loudest thing in the room for a moment. The subcontractor exits triggered a bonding gap you can't fill quickly. And the performance bond call is coming. You already know that. Your name is on the guarantee, not Pinnacle's, Brent said. There has to be a legal remedy here. You can't just, I didn't do anything, Brent. I looked at him directly. TX. Exercised a right that's been in the contract for 6 years. I didn't call them. I didn't ask them to pull the contracts. I read them the clause because they had a right to know what it said. That's it. I paused. You sent the email. You started the clock. His face went through several things in quick succession. I watched him try to find the counter-argument and come up empty. Carl stared at his signature on page 34. Norma wrote something else on the legal pad. I stood up, picked up the folder, buttoned my jacket. I've filed for Harmon Federal Advisory LLC. Dale Okafor has already discussed 2 active projects with me. I'm not going after Pinnacle's client list. But if anyone calls me, I'll pick up. That's what I've always done. I walked to the door, Carl said. Roy, I stopped, turned. You built this. His voice was quiet, almost to himself. I should have protected that. You did protect it, Carl. You signed the protection yourself. You just forgot what you'd signed. I left. The elevator ride down was a long 40 seconds. I watched the floor numbers change and didn't think about anything in particular. When the doors opened, I walked through the lobby, nodded to the security guard, and pushed through the front door into the morning air. I sat in my truck for a few minutes before I started the engine. Not thinking, just sitting. The kind of still you can only get after something that's been building for a long time finally finishes. Then I started the truck and drove. 30 days later, Brent Cole was gone. Carl let him go in a private conversation. No partners meeting, no announcement. Brent's LinkedIn updated within 48 hours. Exploring new ventures in strategic consulting. He never mentioned Pinnacle. He never mentioned federal infrastructure. He posted a quote 3 days later about resilience and fresh starts. I saw it because Sandra sent me a screenshot with no comment attached. She didn't need to add one. Carl sold 35% of Pinnacle to a private equity group out of Dallas to cover the performance bond call, $8.5 million, funded on day 28 of 30. He made it, but just barely, and not without giving up a piece of the company he'd spent 30 years building. The PE group came in with their own ideas about operations. From what Sandra heard, Carl spent most of his days in meetings explaining why things worked the way they did. I didn't feel good about that. I want to be clear about that. Carl Cole was not a bad man. He built something real, and for most of 19 years he was straight with me. What he did wrong was let family cloud his judgment at the exact moment it mattered most. And then he stayed quiet when staying quiet cost him everything. That's not villainy, that's just a man who stopped paying attention. Pinnacle went from 34 employees to 11 within 8 months. They're still operating, last I heard. Smaller work, regional stuff, no federal contracts. The TX. Relationship never recovered. You don't rebuild 14 years of trust after an email like that. Some doors, once they close, stay closed. Harmon Federal Advisory opened its doors in a rented space on the 3rd floor of a building 4 miles from Pinnacle. Nothing fancy, 2 offices, a conference room the size of a large closet, and a coffee maker Sandra brought from home on day 1. Sandra Briggs walked in on day 11, set her bag on the desk by the window and said, "Tell me where you need me. No drama, no negotiation." She'd already resigned from Pinnacle the week before. She told me later she'd been waiting to see if I was actually going to do it. "I figured if you filed the LLC, you were serious," she said. "What tipped you off? You filed the LLC. That's Sandra. She's been keeping me organized for 11 years. She'll keep doing it until one of us retires." Hank Paulson helped me structure the new firm's government contracting credentials. Took 6 weeks to get the federal registration squared away. In the meantime, Dale Okafor and I had 2 conversations about a pair of projects TX. Was planning to go to bid on in the spring. He wasn't making promises, government procurement doesn't work that way, but he was having the conversation. That told me enough. Harmon Federal Advisory closed its first year with $67 million in active contracts. 2 TX. Projects and 1 county drainage program that Dale connected me with through a colleague in San Antonio. By month 9, 2 other state agencies had made initial contact. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that none of it happened because I made a power move or outmaneuvered anyone. It happened because I kept doing the same thing I'd been doing for 26 years, showing up, reading the documents, returning the calls. And because 14 years ago, I asked Hank to put 1 paragraph into a contract renewal that said, in plain language, that what I'd built had value and that value had my name on it. Neil came home for fall break in October. He helped me move a bookshelf in the new office, complained about the parking situation in the building lot, and ate most of the sandwich I'd brought for myself. On the drive back, he was quiet for a while, looking out the passenger window. Then he said, "Mom would have thought this was funny, you know?" The whole thing I glanced over. Funny how, like you spent all these years being the quiet guy in the corner, doing the actual work, and then the one time somebody tried to move you out of the corner, they accidentally handed you the keys. He shrugged. "She always said the people who keep their paperwork straight outlast everyone else." I didn't say anything for a minute. She said that, like 3 times. "Whenever you were doing taxes," he paused, "she thought you were a little obsessive about it." She wasn't wrong. He smiled at the windshield. First time I'd seen that smile in a while. It's his mother's smile, quick, a little sideways, comes and goes before you're ready for it. We drove the rest of the way without talking. It was the comfortable kind of quiet, the kind that doesn't need filling. That evening, I sat on the back steps with a cup of coffee and watched the light drop out of the sky over the neighborhood. The oak in the backyard was starting to turn. Neighbor's dog was barking at something down the street. Normal sounds. Regular evening. I thought about Carl sitting in that room staring at his own signature. I thought about Brent pressing send on an email that unraveled 3 years of his father's equity in 72 hours. I thought about a 6-year-old paragraph in a contract renewal that nobody at Pinnacle had looked at since the day it was signed. I thought about Gloria telling Neil that the people who keep their paperwork straight outlast everyone else. She was right. She was right about most things. If any part of this story sounds familiar, if you've ever been the guy who built something and then watched someone younger and louder try to walk into it like they'd always owned it, then you already know what I'm talking about. You don't have to blow anything up. You don't have to make a scene. You just have to know what you signed, keep your copy, and understand that the work you've done quietly for years is not invisible. It just hasn't been needed yet. The day it gets needed, you'll know. Make sure you're ready when it comes.